appreciate everybody joining our latest webcast today. This is Josh Noble with Ontolic. We host these webcasts every few weeks to focus on a new subject about something new and cool that you can do with SharePoint or FAST. So recently we were working on a project with David at High Point Solutions and John at Nintex, and we were working on a solution for a real client, and they needed to be able to integrate in workflows and various different business processes within their SharePoint environment to create one very seamless content creation and approval process. And they had to also do that under fairly strict government regulations. And so David will give us the whole story behind that, but wanted to bring these three groups together to kind of present this very interesting case study. As we go through this, we'll go through first review the goals of what this particular project was, and then from a very, very high level, what approach was taken to achieve the particular business goals. We'll then look at a little bit of a workflow on, or a mind map of the different processes involved. How are we doing collaboration? How are we reviewing content? And how are we actually approving processes or approving content? And we're using SharePoint for all of that in this case. And then we'll jump right into a live demo. And then we'll be able to jump into QA. So John's here to answer anything you ever want to know about Nintex. Josh, myself, I'll speak about anything around SharePoint search or integration with on previews with document libraries, even content aggregation. And then David and his team are the geniuses behind how this all molds together into one solution. So much more broad spectrum, business analysis line.
All right, as a brief introduction, I head up two practice areas within High Point Solutions. One is R&D, research and development for life sciences, so your traditional clinical through regulatory areas. That could be drug development, applications, drug submission, content management solutions, as well as our collaboration practice, which is largely focused on SharePoint-based solutions. So bringing the two together when it comes to regulated content management delivery for life sciences and healthcare companies, as well as other similar companies. And that's the kind of solution we're going to show you today. So in terms of the approach and goals of our project, what we were doing here was we built a solution for a pharmaceutical company for their marketing area. Now, we're going to talk to it today on a more broader scale, but what we want to talk about is how we needed to provide a flexible approach to the solution, but keep it automated and controlled. So what we're doing is reviewing, authoring, and approving documents that could be a journal ad in the Time magazine you have at your coffee table at home, or see on a poster in a doctor's office, or see a TV spot on a commercial. And so these were going through a SharePoint-based solution, and we needed to do that in a very flexible yet controlled manner. And given that these folks were largely from a creative design background, they needed to see things visually, much more so than textually. And so we wanted to enhance the user experience that they had in SharePoint and give them as many visual cues and clues as we could. And so you'll see how we did that as well. But all over throughout the solution, we had to make sure we maintain compliance, consistency, and adherence to regulatory guidelines. So how did we do that? Well, our approach was to leverage two major tools. First of all is Nintex Workflow 2010, the Enterprise Edition. We used that to automate our business processes, and we used InfoPath forms to customize that experience, and you'll see how we did that as we go through the demo. And this allowed us to automate the processes in a seamless fashion so that the users really didn't know there was workflow going on in the background, but they saw the effects of those tasks and task requests. We then got the real sizzle in the solution when we brought in Ontolica, and when we were able to show them the images of files without having to open them, when we were able to have them search through documents without going through the entire SharePoint farm, as you'll see demonstrated, that's when they got really excited about the overall solution we were delivering. And then we took some standard 2010 constructs like managed metadata services to ensure that the search results were achieved consistently, to ensure that we applied the data we needed to this to make it effective. So I want to show all that in the demo. Just at a high level, the process we were doing here, again, author, review, and approve content. Now in this case, over on the left side, you'll see this thing called Create Project. And a project in our context was leveraging SharePoint 2010's document set features. And so a document set, if you're not familiar with it, is like a virtual folder. It allows you to bring a collection of documents together and treat them as one. And in fact, you can pass metadata or properties about those documents from the document set level down to each one of the individual components and spread that information very easily. And so we use that for this process because for a journal ad, if you're making statements about the safety or efficacy of a product, you need supporting materials to help you do that. You need to be able to get the data of what the percentage of adverse events were, perhaps, or what the cure rates were, and so forth. So at this point, we would, through the contribute piece, ask people to provide that information, provide that journal ad. Perhaps it's an external agency, so it's not an internal player at this time. And the client said, well, we do that once, and then we go right into the review stage. The people that are playing in this process know what they're doing, so let's go right into the review, and let's set that up right in the very beginning. And so that was the approach we took, gluing those two pieces together. But where the power and the magic happened is in that very next step, where it's called Determine Next Steps, where we enabled the business to change their mind. We enabled them to bring in ad hoc reviewers that weren't originally planned. We enabled them to start over from the beginning without having to cancel the workflow and start from scratch. So we enabled them to go in multiple directions, but all the while recording that they did so, counting the number of times they did so, and ensuring that they got to the next place each and every time accurately and correctly. And so that's what I want to show you next. Okay, now, what you're seeing is the application. This is the landing page. We have several things happening on this page. So what you're not seeing in a typical intranet-like environment are things like, announcements or news articles or things like that. This is a working content management repository. So we first come into this and we find the main two repositories. First and foremost is our approved materials. And if I were to go into this repository, I would see by product name the information that we have developed, the journal ads that we're working on and presenting. And so I could quickly see what I'm looking for just by hovering over things like that. We'll get into that more in a minute, but this is our main functional end state of our documents. We also have this agency collaboration piece, which is where we do all our work in progress, which I'll get to shortly. Down below under the departmental piece is where we have the ability to do additional content management and simpler workflows. And so, for example, let me take you into this library called Payer Pricing. So here we have a subset of documents that we're working on. Now, if I look back at a traditional SharePoint view, this is what I might see when I come into that library. And notice all I see is an icon, Word or a Adobe image. I see text. I don't see any of the thumbnails like I was describing. And so what we wanted to provide using Ontolica was the ability to quickly look at our content and find the documents that we're looking for. So, for example, I hover over it. I can see the first page. If I come to this document, for example, notice it's a 149-page document. I know in here somewhere it's a technical document, and some of you may be have technical background on the phone. If I was looking for, example, Ajax, I know we talked about Ajax and have an Ajax connector somewhere in the document. I'm sure it's here somewhere. And sure enough, what I get back is 2 pages where that is found. If I click on that page number, without opening a 150 or 49-page document in Word, I'm able to get to that page, see the text is highlighted for me, and I can go right through that document. So great features and functions that were given to the business users that really enhanced their functional capabilities here. Now, if we look then further back at these documents, there's other things I can do right from this library. So let's go back to the top to our collaboration space where we do the work in progress. And let's look at this. So what we have here is three major sections of this page. First is, as you can see, my tasks. So very quickly, thanks to Nintex, I can see the tasks that I'm working on, when they're due. What we've done here is if they're overdue, highlights in red, shows me that I'm behind, and also shows me the current task that I'm in that case. So I see I'm working on a number of projects. This middle section is a view into this collaboration space, but organized by life cycle state, essentially. So I can quickly go from how many documents do I have in draft, do I have in this MLR, which stands for medical, legal, and regulatory review, to what do I have as final approved documents. And so I can quickly get back and forth to see what is being worked on by the whole commercial community. And down below, I see a quick way to get to my workflow tasks. So these are things that I have started, I've created, my projects. And notice what it says here, current actions. It shows me the state each of those are in. And that's very important because quite often we see with workflows, it can be, in some cases, a black box, right, where a workflow starts and things are going, but we can't tell exactly where it is. And what we've done here is taken the information that Nintex provides us, presents it in a way that can easily be found, and allows the users to manage the work they've initiated, the work they have to do, and take a look at the work that's being done within their organization. So if we were going to go create a new project, then let's call it High Point Cure Webinar. So we have a number of fields here. This may be a little much for an entry form, but it's very important to gather as much information as we can to kick this off. When I said we were using manage metadata, here's an example of that function. So we have a controlled vocabulary. As we grab these items, we're able to bring those products back in a controlled manner so that we don't have typos and other information happening. We can also then quickly type ahead if we know some of those items that are on the list, and I don't have to open up the piece each time. And I'll just fill in some of these. So from a marketing perspective, we're gathering who are the internal partners, who are the external partners, that type of thing. Notice with the managed metadata, we also can keep thesaurus, so we can capture U.S. or USA. I type in U.S., and it brings me back a consistent variable each time so that I know it's United States always. If I go to target audience, I don't remember what those are perhaps, so I'm going to pick this is for a patient. And so I'm gathering the metadata to manage this activity. And so I'll quickly enter some dates here. Now, as we get to the people, this is where we're starting to do a number of things that look rather innocuous to the end user. So, for example, I'm going to come in here and say, who is the coordinator? I could go use the standard people picker from SharePoint, but it's quicker to just type it. I'm going to put myself in as the coordinator. Now, Project Participants does a number of things for me. Number one, and most importantly, it sets the security for this project. Just by typing in the names here, or gathering them from the people picker, I now have added two people who have access to this collection of documents, which is managed through the workflow in the background. By asking who are the contributors, I can, I can automatically start the workflow by sending it to these people to say, please contribute content. One of the features that happens consistently in this is we have to have deadlines. Work always gives us deadlines, right? So we have the ability to set an end date and reminders and so forth. So I'll put a little note, please add your content, and this will be seen in the workflow as we move forward. Then I can say who will the reviewers be and add those as well, and when is their review date complete. So when I add all that information, what is happening is now I'm creating a document set, so a collection of documents, at which point I would upload documents to this and go through the process. So let me show you a similar one. And if I go back to this example, what you'll see is now I have a document set like I had created before. I've uploaded some documents, and if I highlight this icon, now, thanks to Ontolica, I'm able to preview the document that I uploaded, and ultimately, once the crawl occurs, I'll have those in place of the magnifying glasses. I have a Word document, I have PDF documents, and now I'm able to go through the review process. So I've jumped ahead a few steps, since we're behind a few minutes, and gone to the point where I've actually completed the contribution and I've done an initial review. Let me show you what that initial review looks like. One of the things we've added in the content management solution is the ability to do parallel PDF reviews, because on graphical components, on elements that are not text-based like Word, you can't really co-author. And so the ability to add comments and so forth to something like this is very important. And so as you'll see, we've got the standard Adobe features where I can go in and add comments to this document. And this is a real-time feed back and forth to the server with the comments stored separately from the documents themselves. And so I can add a comment, I can add text, I can change these things, and you'll see these things are going on in parallel in the background. So another business productivity feature. Now, so what has happened is I've done the review, I've completed the review process, and now I've told the coordinator I'm done. But we had comments. So as a coordinator, and this is where the real flexibility happened, the magic in the process occurred. Notice what we're seeing here is now, as a coordinator, I'm the human intervention because we can't tell if this document was perfect. We could approve it. We could have approved it with comments. We could have done a number of things. And so what I can do now is I can send it off for additional reviewers. I can say we need to start it all over again, tell the people, pick the people that need to do those activities and assign it right here, or promote it to the next level in the life cycle and tell those people who need to be coordinating those activities. So again, a very powerful stage in that life cycle that we saw in that Visio diagram that showed that now I can determine multiple branches in a workflow, allowing me tremendous flexibility without having to rework a workflow within an application and retest it and validate it, but allowing me to grow and change my business as needs arise. So I wanted to show you that as well. We don't need to execute it at this time, but notice we were also kept counters of those things, and of course, through the workflow history, we kept tasks and track of who did every step and where we are in every step along the way. So given the timing, let me show you one other thing on this side of our search center looking at the Ontolica components. So if I start typing, what you'll see returned is a type ahead feature that shows these are the things that people have been looking for before. These are the types of queries people have been making, and it gives me a short list and returns those objects back. So in the Search Center, I get to see the documents very similarly to how I saw them in the library. I can hover over them, I can click on them, I can explore the documents. I can look at each individual page and search within those pages. I can also look at automating some other functions. So, for example, I know if I come in here that my colleague Joe wrote a document and I saw some information pop up on it, but I know it's not complete yet. I know he's still working on it. And notice here, even in the search, I'm able to, thanks to Ontalica, add workflows. So this content review is the same content review that I would have done down in the departmental library. So I simply pick content review, and now I'm presented with who should review this. I can send it back to Joe and ask him to review that document and add more information to it. Again, I'll pick a date. We always have due dates on these pieces. Give him some time to fill in. Please fill out the document. And that was done right from the search interface. And notice now I'm back in the library and I can see that that document is in a workflow, and I got there from the search. So we are out of time, Josh. So I'm going to stop there at this point and open it up for questions.
Yeah, no problem. I think we were fairly good on time. I know that we scheduled it right till 30 minutes after, but I think we managed to go through everything primarily that we wanted to. There's a lot of other rich features in this environment. So if you have any questions, if you want to find out more, I'm sure that David and his team at High Point are more than happy to provide a much more in-depth walkthrough of this particular environment and how it can be these types of solutions can be customized to your particular processes. But like you said, at this time we'll open up to any sort of questions anybody has. We have a question from Kristen. Can you show how you would edit the workflow if you need to make changes that didn't fit within the original flexibility?
So I'm going into a view that certainly is not something a typical end user would do. But what I'm going into is looking at the agency collaboration workflow. And what that will do is open Workflow Designer, which enables us to drag and drop and build the workflow that you saw executed. So let me zoom out. Now to show how we would do it if that standard workflow, and it's probably very small on your screen, we use a technique called a state machine, and what that means is it allows us to work through a number of different steps with one standard structure. So if, for example, you wanted to add a different notification or something like that, you would simply come in here, notice where it says like set review dates, set review instructions, communicate those things. If I wanted to add, for example, during an ad hoc review, perhaps I wanted to add a communication, a notification. I could simply drag and drop that notification and then configure that to say what information should I put in there, where does the notification go, to whom does it go, and it could pull it from a variable or pull it right from other elements of the workflow, type in the text, and even include variables in those messages as well. And that's how I might extend the workflow. I see a question, Josh, from Ann. How do we capture the workflow action and display it? So in terms of how do we capture the workflow action and display it? So back to the workflow diagram that you saw, what I had was we had multiple branches in that state machine. So if, for example, when we created a project, we know that it's the first time through that execution. And so we put that text, so the developer that built this put that text hard-coded in as the initial contribution. So that was directly right into the workflow itself. Now, if you then go through it again or move to the next state, so MLR, again, medical, legal, regulatory, that's this state right here. And when we move to that stage, we know in the workflow that we're now progressing to that life cycle state. So that text was put in as the workflow action, which we display here in this web part. Each time we come back to the next steps branch, which is the one that brings up that multi-dimensional form that allows us to go in multiple directions, we know that if I say send for ad hoc review, that I'm going to send it out to reviewers, and then I'm going to put in a task here of ad hoc review. And so it's, although we're flexible, at least from an end user perspective, we know precisely which branch of the workflow we're in, and that's how we can display the current action.
King asked a question in the chat. David showed some inline document search features with thumbnails. Who provides that feature? And I provide the answer in chat. That's something that's done by Ontolica Search Preview or Ontolica Library Preview. Just depends on where you want those previews to be enabled. Very light solution that can be plugged into any environment without additional hardware.
So back to the point you were making, Josh, here's the preview in a library view.
I do again appreciate everybody joining the session today, and especially David and John for donating the time to present with us and share the solution today.